FinTech Chatter, brought to you by Tier 1 People, leaders in FinTech executive search. Welcome to FinTech Chatter, the show that connects leaders from the FinTech community to talk about their experiences and share learnings on leadership, hiring, entrepreneurship, raising capital, scaling, and of course, a bit of a chat. I'm your host, Dexter Cousins. And in 2022, Tier 1 People is committed to showcasing 50 of Australia's up-and-coming fintechs. Show your support for the next wave of Aussie fintechs with a like, a subscribe, and a comment. It really helps spread the word on a great bunch of founders. And if you prefer to watch, head on over to FinTech Chatter TV on YouTube and make sure to leave us a like and hit subscribe. And if you want to connect with me, you can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter. Now on to today's guest. She's someone I call the Super Woman of FinTech. As CEO and co-founder of Paypa, chair of FinTech Australia, advisor on payments, and mum of 4, Simone Joyce is a force of nature. Paypa is a B2B payments platform bringing together the world of traditional payments, crypto, and real-time payments technology like Pay To. Simone, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dexter. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's awesome to have you with us. And I guess, first of all, great to have you with me in the capacity of an entrepreneur, because you were my wingman when we did the payments special a couple of years back. We've then had you on the show as chair of FinTech Australia. We did FinTech Insider together. And now we finally get to talk about, I guess, your real thing, right? Not your side hustles or what you've been working hard on for the last few years in Paypa. Would you like to tell our subscribers a little bit more about yourself and Paypa?
Yeah, sure. So we started as an organization in 2018, which seems like a lifetime ago, but it's only 4 years ago. We started in January that year. And at the time, we were really focused on the type of payments that would be ongoing. So a continuing relationship. And most people think about, oh, you mean like gym payments? But there's so many more of those type of payments that we as people have in our lives. Everything from mortgage payments, insurance payments, after school care, streaming services. There's more and more of them in our daily lives. And we were interested in them because we noticed some significant problems in that industry, both for businesses receiving the payments and payers making them, all to do with transparency and understanding when these payments were happening versus lost cash flow, etc. And we had a look around at what was happening at the time and went, instead of creating a better system for businesses to manage or just focusing on the payer, we're going to join those two things together so that we can solve the overarching problem, which was an ecosystem problem. We launched properly and started, actually doing the money movement on the 13th of August that year. It was the scariest day of my life, Dexter, and I've got 4 children, so that's saying something. But it all went quite well, and we were really wanting to test that this thing that we were doing, which was really quite a different approach, creating a transparent environment, connecting a business and a payer via a smart payment agreement or a digital agreement that continued to evolve. That was quite new at the time, and we were just wanting to test that it was going to work. It did quite well. And we then started thinking about, well, where's the best place for us to make sure this gets as wide a distribution as possible? Because we really wanted to make sure that everyone could have this experience, no matter who they were paying or what they were paying with. And for us, that meant that actually banks are our best customers for that. Banks distribute our software to their business customers as part of their banking service, who then can send out these smart payment agreements to their payers. And so in that way, we could really start to cover a wider slice of the landscape and bring these more beneficial experiences to everyone. So today, when we started, we were a team of 6. And today we literally had 5 more people start this morning. So we're a team of 28 today.
Awesome. And you're based up in Brisbane, is that right?
We are, and we're all in Brisbane, actually. We don't have anyone, distributed at this stage. That might change throughout this year. But we've found that working from Brisbane, we've got some really great talent up here, and it's a really nice place for us to be based out of.
It's notoriously difficult, Simone, really, I guess, dealing with banks and that whole kind of collaboration piece, we've kind of talked about it to death. How have you found the experience of partnering with banks if they're your key customers?
Hugely nerve-wracking, I would say, and temper that with, you need a degree of patience and faith in what you're doing. I think that, it's something that's been discussed so much, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but the pace of a bank is very different to the pace and the needs of a fintech. So giving ourselves the, scope to go at that pace, slow down a little bit, and maybe just delay a commercial outcome was really important to us. And we kind of structured ourselves around that. But holy moly, it's a process, I tell you. And it's not something that we could have done straight out of the gates, right? When we went first to market, we were engaging directly with businesses. And that's because we couldn't have gone and knocked on the door of a bank and said, "Oh, excuse me, big bank, we've got this thing and we think it'll be really good." Oh, and they would say, "Oh, okay, so show me how it's working." "Oh, we can't. You'd be our first customer." That's probably a bridge too far, right?
Yeah. What secrets have you got then in order to kind of get traction, get those discussions? And have them to be actually, kind of constructive discussions rather than just be laughed out the room.
Yeah. Look, I wish that I could tell you I had this great strategy and here are the secrets. But to be honest, it was really organic and it was a lot of learning as we went. For us, certainly in the Australian market, it might be different when we go to the US. It was really a relationship-driven process. And it was as much us learning about what the bank needed for us to look like and for us to engage with, as us educating the bank about what they needed from us, if that makes sense. It also meant that we had to be quite open to a lot of feedback on requirements. To be a vendor to a bank, you have to be able to look and operate in a particular way, particularly with the way that we are. We form part of the critical infrastructure of a bank when we go in there. And that means that bank's directors are actually personally liable if we have, a cyber incident, for example, or anything goes a bit pear-shaped. Because of the level of criticality we have, that actually comes back to reflect upon the directors. So we need to be operating at quite a high level of security, compliance, and organisational structure to even start those conversations. So having those foundation things ticked off for us was a big investment. Don't get me wrong, it was a big investment and we continue to make that investment all the time. But it meant that we could get past that first level of discussion. I think also, even though we did some things that really weren't our long-term plan, again, coming back to serving businesses directly, it actually then helped us work towards that more strategic long-term plan. So putting those things in place helped us to progress to the next level. I often think about the Airbnb founders back in the day making cereal. Do you remember this? They made like the Obama O's and something else. They made 2 boxes of cereal that they were selling to get enough money to do the next thing. And then they went out and personally took photos of people's apartments so the listings looked better. So those things weren't the long-term goals. They weren't scalable, but they certainly helped on the long road to where they needed to go next.
Yeah. When you look back over the journey so far, Simone, what would you say has been the biggest challenge to date and that you've had to overcome?
Biggest challenge, I can't put my finger on a biggest challenge because every challenge that comes up, probably if you looked at it in isolation, seems huge and bigger than the previous one. But you also have learnt more than the previous one and you're also at a different point on the journey. So I think that challenges continually come up, but you get better adept at handling them and recognising your pattern of handling them. And I think that was actually, that's probably the overall biggest challenge, is recognising what my patterns are in reacting to and dealing with challenges.
Mm. When you kind of look at that, you mentioned before, having 4 kids. One of the things I've probably said this hundreds of times now, but when you have kids, it is a little bit like having your own business, and that you see so much of your own kind of faults and failures reflected in your kids' behavior. And initially you kind of wonder where they got it from, and then you kind of look in the mirror and go,
oh.
Yeah.
Yes.
So is that something that you kind of found has kind of helped you in being a startup founder?
I think so. It certainly helped me be able to deal with a lot of different streams of input information and demands at once. But yeah, it's funny actually what you just said about, you see your own habits reflected back at you. Having a discussion with my 14-year-old about why we shouldn't do everything at the last minute for an assignment. The number of times that I've been up until 2 or 3 just finishing off a thing, that's a hard recognition to take on board. But look, I think that having kids, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 in some people's cases, it does actually add, and it gives you a lot back that you can bring in to make you a stronger operator at work, as well as obviously being a big demand on your time and attention too.
Now, there was some big news recently as well. Do you want to share that with us?
I think you mean the CBA announcement. Yes. I
can't think of much bigger unless number 5's on the way.
Please don't even say that, Dexter. Oh my goodness. Strike that from the record. Look, the CBA announcement, it was a momentous moment for us, but we'd been working on that for so long internally that it already felt like we had normalized that, and it was part of who we are and where we're going. So when it became public, it was really quite funny to have everyone, learning it the first time and coming to speak to us about it. But for us, that deal is significant because obviously they're a shareholder, but we also have a partnership with them for our product. And for us, that's a really important piece of distribution for us. It's a really important way of getting our network effect out into the banking landscape. And CBA are really on board with our vision there, our overall mission to create a good experience for businesses and payers across Australia, no matter who they're paying or what they're paying with. CBA forms a really strong pillar in that mark for us, particularly given all of the changes that we're going to see this year in Australia come through, driven by, fast payments and Pay To and CDR and all the other amazing things that is happening. It was a really important piece of the puzzle for us, and we're really happy to be in partnership with them.
I wanted to ask you as well about, I guess, the actual kind of challenges that any founder has around coming up with an idea and then seeing technology evolve so quickly that perhaps your idea becomes redundant or needs to evolve. And I guess this space that you're in, crypto and DeFi, are two things that almost would perhaps negate the initial kind of idea or vision that you had for a pay-per-plane solution. Was the thing that really got me about the CBA announcement, not only the great news and being happy for you, but was also probably another huge announcement end of last year, was CBA offering crypto to their customers. How much do you see that kind of playing a part in your role as a founder and having to kind of continually evolve and look at innovation and know that, hey, as a disruptor, I could be disrupted myself?
It's a really good point, and it's one that that I've been thinking about a lot recently too. But the way that we've designed Paypa as a system and as a company is not bound to the type of payment that's running through it. And today we see that playing out in the switch between direct debit today and what will be, a real-time payment tomorrow. But it also means that we can go into that same mindset and go, well, you know what? It doesn't matter if the business wants to get paid via crypto. It doesn't matter if the payer wants to link up their crypto wallet and pay their phone bill with a coin, right? for us, the things that won't change are the fact that people want to have transparency and some extent of autonomy of management over their payments that are going to happen on a frequency, monthly, weekly, whatever. On the other side, you have businesses that need assurance that that payment's going to happen. And if it doesn't happen, their customer is going to be looked after before any type of, recovery type actions happen. That is a service layer that you can plug in any type of payment mechanism into. For us, we see that playing out in its first instance of we have a partnership with Square that's focused on the North American market. And part of that partnership for us is allowing people to plug in their Cash App. So as a business, you can send out a payment request. The payer on the other end might choose to pay with Visa, MasterCard, Amex, or Cash App. And for us, that will be the first instance of crypto running through our system. So it's actually a really important point that you make. And I think it's actually got a name. I think it's called the Innovator's Dilemma. And I think that the cycle between live product and Innovator's Dilemma is shortening and shortening and shortening. And maybe it will continue to do so. Maybe it will, stop at a particular point. But it's something that I'm personally super aware of. And I hope that we've got the formula right, certainly for the next few years anyway. We'll wait and see.
No, as I mentioned in the kind of beginning of the show, there's many hats that you wear, and we've had you on the show wearing some of those other hats. Today, it's the entrepreneur hat. But what I'm really interested is, how did you get to the point of becoming an entrepreneur? Because nobody's born one. Nobody kind of starts out, or very few people start out intentionally to become one. What's your backstory to how you ended up on that path, Simone?
Accident and misadventure, Dexter. And I still don't think of myself as an entrepreneur. Growing up in the 80s, that word to me conjured up visions of businessmen with those grey leather slip-on shoes and briefcases. It's not something I ever would apply to myself. So look, I guess Paypa Plane is certainly not my first foray into the world of tech startups. I had a couple more before this that went down in flames, but it wasn't that interesting. It all came about after I moved back from Dubai. I'd had my first 2 children over there. I came back freshly divorced with 2 essentially babies and went, oh, crikey, what am I going to do now? I know, I'll go back to uni. I wanted to do midwifery, and I actually got into that. And then it dawned on me that was mainly shifts. Like all of the lessons were shift working in a hospital, which does not suit a single mother of 2 young children particularly well. So I switched out to organisational psychology at UQ here in Brisbane. And on campus one day, it was me, like 32, I think I was at the time, with all the young kids. There's this little poster for this thing called iLab, which was a joint venture between UQ and the state government at the time. So I went along and I'd never heard of a tech business before. I'd never heard of this whole world of startups. I had an iPhone, barely knew how to use the thing at the time. And the next minute, I'm absolutely hooked and ended up foregoing my organizational psychology degree to go deeper and deeper into this world of startups, and haven't looked back. It was when I came into the world of payments that something really clicked for me. I went, oh, actually, this is something that really is resonating with me as a really important part of our daily lives that maybe could do with a bit of extra work.
Yeah. So it's an amazing story, Simone. And I think what really strikes me is that your interpretation, or what you believed an entrepreneur to be, it's my daughter who's 10, nearly 11. Her idea of an entrepreneur is people like yourself. So it's amazing, right? Funny? To see how, but to see how perceptions have shifted, and obviously I guess my daughter kind of sees fairly closely the work that I do as well. But it's amazing to see how that then kind of permeates society and changes, I guess the art of the possible for young minds as well.
It's such a positive cycle, and that's why companies and people doing these type of things is super important, because it's not just about that company and that person. It's about the ripples that they create around them.
No, you talked before about it being a workforce that's all in Brisbane. I've got to be honest, in my capacity of kind of knowing the talent market, it's not an area traditionally where I would have gone for fintech talent. It's great to see that there's now a lot more kind of vibrancy to the scene there in Brisbane. But where did you go to initially go and find talent? Because it's not like you could go and poach them from another fintech there.
No. And we are a bit funny about how we go about inviting people to join us. We don't advertise for positions. We're not allowed to post on LinkedIn or anything like that. For us, we really would like people to be recommended to us via our trusted network, because we're really keen on who people are, as equally or sometimes even more importantly than their experience. And we found that if you get the right people on board and truly on board, like really deeply understand what we're doing and why we're doing it, and they have a natural aptitude or a natural enjoyment of, well, let's be honest, most of the people that we work with are engineers. If they enjoy what they do, they're going to be able to pick up. We're rewriting everything in Golang at the moment for a variety of reasons, and we've hired 14 people starting over the next 6 weeks. Maybe 2 of them have ever used Golang before, but that's not the point. The point is that they will grow with us, they'll extend their skill set, and we will really invest in them, and they'll invest back in us as well. And that's what we say is you have to be excellent on 2 fronts. You have to be an excellent person, and you have to believe in the excellence of what you do. And that has helped us to create a really enjoyable culture. It's just lovely. One of our biggest problems at the moment, Dexter, is we all like to have lunch together, and our kitchen's too small for everyone to sit in. Everyone goes and gets their lunch and brings it back. And I have to sit in the cheap seats the other day outside of the kitchen, like one of our little extra tables. We're moving up to a new office where one of the things we've done is build out a really big eating area because we just like to be around each other.
So as the business scales, and you mentioned there, you've gone from 5 people now to 28. What do you see as being maybe some of the challenges that you've got ahead as you continue to grow the business? 5 starters today. I mean, how do you go about managing the scaling challenges of bringing new people in?
I get really worried about what I call the speed wobbles, where you're going along, you pick up momentum, and then more people jump into the car and it gets a bit wobbly. And I see that really as because perhaps the new people that came on, they might have come on so suddenly or as quite a big group that they didn't have that really deep embedded experience that you can give when you're smaller. So one of the reasons that we've grown quite slowly comparatively, remember in Brisbane we also have SwiftX, who are amazing, but they are enormous, and they got enormous really quickly, and they've done it quite well from what I can see. They're amazing. We're not quite built like that. So we've been very careful in making sure that as we bring people on, we give them the space to feel like they're really joining the team and they're not just getting an engineer's handbook and off you go. And also making sure that we don't lose the usness of who we are. Yeah. It's really hard to identify that. It's really hard to write that down. But we're quite protective of that. And that means being really specific about things that might not be working and addressing them quickly and addressing them in a way that is beneficial for everyone, but does protect our culture.
Yeah. There's a lot of kind of memes out there around hiring, and I think one of the most famous ones is Simon Sinek. You don't hire skills, you hire on attitude, which I think is the biggest piece of nonsense ever. I've been doing this 23 years, and I've never yet found a process which can accurately and consistently measure somebody's attitude. And I'm yet to come across a business that can just completely train a new skill set in a person just because they've got a great attitude. What would you say are the kind of and you touched on this a bit earlier around, this kind of commitment to excellence, but how do you go about identifying kind of those things and those traits in people? As you grow and the network, it becomes less about you being able to just recommend or have recommendations come to you, but there's going to be some strangers kind of come into the group as well?
I think that it's an art, not a science, and that's something that we just have to get comfortable with. So at the moment, I still sit in on every job interview. I have, if it's an engineer, our CTO and our head of product also sit in on it, and we have. It's very conversational, but one of the questions that my CTO always asks is, "Why do you like coding?" And then we watch how the person answers, and there's a certain fervor of spark in some people's eye when they're describing writing code and why they like a particular language or what motivated them to get into it in the first place. And it's really obvious when it's not there, but you couldn't put your finger on it if you're looking at it. It would just feel right. Yeah. That's only going to get us so far. I'm hyper aware of it, and I'm also not sure how to solve that problem yet, Dexter. When we get to the point where, we're X number of people, it's probably not going to be in my capacity to sit in every one of our job interviews. It's probably not important to have, the CTO personally vet every single engineer that comes through, or maybe it is. I don't know yet, but we do have someone coming in to help us with people and culture her role will be to look out for and protect that. I think that's going to be a really long process of osmosising everything that we are and who we are into her, so she can continue that as her main focus. But I'll let you know if the answer comes to me. But at the moment, that's what we've got.
I don't think there isn't one answer. And what really interested me about you, the explanation you've just given there, Simone, I actually see in my role as well, I've become, certainly over the last 6-7 years, I feel like I've become more of a psychologist than I have a recruiter, and it was interesting to hear about your background prior and going down that path of organizational psychology, because a lot of the process that we have here at Tier 1 People is really about observing what people do outside of the interview process, not what they do as they're being asked the question and kind of with the answer that they give. So it was interesting to see that you're not necessarily listening to the answer, but watching the person and how they deliver that answer. That gives you more clues as to perhaps whether they're the right person or not. And I think that's something that I think is really missing from a lot of recruitment processes that we hear about, is really that observation of what is it that this person brings, and taking them outside of the environment of an interview, which is, it's an audition, it's staged. How do you actually understand and get insights into somebody's behaviors and motivations?
Yeah, and also not everyone interviews well, right? Like, it's a very specific formula that's tailored to very specific people. But we find that question and questions like it allows people to relax a little bit and just talk about something that they know. And it's worked well for us so far.
I remember reading a book about 6-7 years ago by the original HR director for Google called Work Rules. And he makes a really valid point, which is interviews actually identify the best person for the interview, not the best person for the job. And it's true, you end up hiring a great storyteller, not necessarily a great engineer. So I think it's a really, it is a caution that, hey, whilst some of these questions can help, there's a lot more that needs to go into an interview process than just the questions that are asked.
I agree with that.
Now you've kind of gone on this journey and kind of gone in feet first. You've increased or doubled the size. You've scaled up the family as well as the business as you've been going on this journey. You're chair for FinTech Australia, the peak industry body here in Oz. You sit on a number of advisory committees. I've got to ask, what is your secret to finding the time to do all of this stuff and at the same time being possibly the nicest person that I've ever met in all of FinTech?
Oh, goodness me, Dexter. Well, kindness doesn't take time. That's just, that's something that everyone can achieve at minimum bar. I don't know. And again, you asked me for these secrets. I don't have any. I think that if things are important, you make time for them. And look, I've just come off, we have 9-day fortnights at Paypa now. So we've just come off the back of a 3-day weekend. That extra day a week gives me a lot of extra time to put things back in, that I might have pushed back a little bit. Kids are still at school on that Friday, so it gives you extra time to do stuff. The reason that I joined FinTech Australia as a director back in the day was that I really actually believed that there needs to be a very tight relationship between fintechs and regulators, and that seemed like the best place to try and help make that change. I stayed because it continued to be even more important, and taking my paper plane hat off for a minute and putting on my support everyone hat. There's just so many great fintechs in this country, and we just need a really well-trained voice to advocate for that, and that voice happens to be the collective voice of FinTech Australia. So that's important to me, so I keep making time for it. That won't go on forever. I do think that the organisation is healthy with a good cycle through of the people in the directors' roles, and I've been there for a number of years now. I don't know. You've got 2 kids in a business too, Dexter. You're just as busy as I am. Everyone's really busy, and everyone makes time and finds time to do things. And I'll sleep, in another 10 years, I'll have time to sleep more. That'll be nice.
Yeah, it's I don't know how you've done it, particularly with the 4 kids. I remember just having my 2 close together, and I think I went 4 years on about 3 hours sleep a night.
Yeah. I actually listened to you in one of your earlier episodes talking about your sleep schedule, and it was like post-traumatic stress listening to that. But when we had Edith, who's number 4, no one even knew that I was pregnant, because it was during that first lockdown in 2020, and everyone just saw me from like shoulders up. And then all of a sudden I had this little tiny baby on my shoulder having meetings. I took my laptop to the hospital. I had a C-section, so I was able to keep working because it was all on a schedule. Maybe I wish that I had taken a little bit more time, but it was also where we were at that particular time of life. There were really important things happening. And I'm glad that I did it. It's not the same experience that everyone will have, but it was my experience, and I have an extremely supportive husband who happens to be our product designer as well. So it's kind of a nice symbiosis there, which you would understand.
Yeah. How do you manage that, having your life partner in the business as well?
Well, not only do I have my life partner, I also have 2 of my siblings. I have my brother is my co-founder and our chief revenue officer, and my other brother is our head of compliance. So it's interesting, and I would have to say that working closely with Jonathan, my co-founder, has been a more interesting relationship dynamic than working with my husband. But I will say that if you can get the balance right, there is nothing that makes a stronger and more effective operating partnership than people that you know very, very well. Having a co-founder is like having a marriage anyway, and then having someone who is living and breathing as much as you are the importance of this thing, it kind of just gives you a shorthand language. What we do have to be careful though is letting it leak too much into home, because I will, like at 11:15 at night, go, I just remembered blah 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 blah, and Joyce, his name's Damien, I call him Joyce. It is startling to some people, but Joyce will go, don't talk to me about that now, my brain won't turn off. So we've had to learn about boundaries.
Yeah, but that's caused a lot of problems in my business as well, where ships passing in the night about really important stuff. I told you, remember I told you.
I told you when after you brushed your teeth. Oh no, that's not okay.
It doesn't count.
Yeah.
Simone, you're a really big inspiration to me. I know you're a big inspiration to my family, and I know you're a big inspiration to a lot of people here in the Aussie fintech scene as well. Who's your big inspiration in life?
I don't have one. I think I have situational inspirations, if that makes sense. My mum is a huge inspiration to me. She also had 4 kids. My youngest sibling is quite heavily special needs, so she coped with a lot when we were kids, and she was always worked full-time as a teacher. That's a demanding job if there ever was one. Lee Hatton, who I know you've had on your show, she's had an amazing career and she approaches things in a very balanced way. I just think she's amazing. Who else? Oh, look, people, I just, over the Christmas break, I read The Chancellor, which is a book about Angela Merkel. She's incredible. Indra Nooyi, the CEO of PepsiCo. There's so many incredible people out there that you can just magpie little bits and pieces of their experience. But I think we're overly blessed in Australia for inspirational leaders in this space.
Awesome. And if you could go back in time, is there anything that you think you would do differently on this paper plane journey?
No, because I worry that if you took something away, you wouldn't have a learning from it, if that makes sense. If you delete something, there's a vacuum, and the knowledge that you would have had at that time gets deleted from your brain. So even though some things have been extraordinarily hard, it's still something you had to go through to get to the next stage.
So when you look now at the fintech industry here in Oz, which business or which area of fintech has got you really excited right now, and you can't say paper plane?
Okay. Look, I think I don't want to call out one area. What I want to say is we're at the point of a once in a lifetime, once in a generation shift in how we manage our finances. And that's because of a lot of things. It's because of CDR. It's because of what Web3 will bring us. It's because of the changing landscape of banking. It's all of these things that are going into the mix. And we're really, really seeing a pivot point that we'll look back on. People talk about the Wallace Report payments at the moment. Oh, the last time we reviewed this is the Wallace Report. Actually, it wasn't a huge game change at that time. It's going to be. And we're in it right now, and we're building it. We're shaping it. You're shaping it by putting people in really important positions to shape it. That, I think, is what's the most exciting thing. We get to participate in that.
And when you look at, I guess, the ecosystem as a whole, where do you think we're at right now in this moment in time? Particularly when you compare us globally.
Yeah, I think we're the awkward teenager who's just finished high school and they're about to start doing some really cool stuff in university. I think we're there. We've come through the early embryonic stage. We've come through the learning about what other jurisdictions are doing. We're now at the point where we've got our own personality as an ecosystem. We've got our own goals, and we've actually got a really clear pathway to do that. And we're starting to influence how other people are doing things. Just look at Joe Biden talking about how they're thinking about crypto assets, looking at Australia as part of the inspiration of that. Canada's doing the same thing. The UK kind of did the same thing and started reshaping to follow us. I think that we've maybe been a bit slower off the mark because we've done things in more of a regulatory-led approach, but it's given us such a good foundation that I think we're about to see some very cool stuff happening that will be the envy of the world here and bring a lot of companies in.
Awesome. Now, this next 12 months, what have you got in store for us?
Well, no more babies, that's for sure. It's going to be, Pay To launches in July. We'll be part of that, along with other companies who are doing really interesting things. Zepto, Manuva, I think Hey as a Service might be involved as well. So there's going to be some really cool things that not just the banks, but we as fintechs and Paper Plane will be doing. Beyond that, we've got to move into a new office. We're growing a little bit bigger. We will have a lot of products live with banks this year. So ultimately, I would like everybody to be able to use part of our software without really realizing they're using our software, because it provides a really good embedded experience for them. That will start really in earnest this year.
Is anybody out there, Simone, who's interested in using Paper Plane as a service and partnering with you? What's the best way for them to reach out?
The best way is just to get in contact with me. My email is s@paperplane.com. Super simple and easy. But I'll be able to help with directing you to the right person if it's not me.
And there's some seriously good talent listens to this show. If they're interested in potentially joining Paper Plane, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
First of all, have a look at our website. It's very cryptic at the moment, but it'll give you more of an idea about how we approach the things that we do. And then same thing, send me an email and we'll see if we can find a spot for you.
And you can connect with me, Dexter Cousins, on LinkedIn and Twitter. For early access to new shows and updates on the latest exclusive opportunities through Tier 1 people, subscribe to our newsletter by visiting the FinTech Chatter page on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, remember to press follow on your favorite podcast player and please consider leaving us a review. It really does help me in bringing in great guests and help FinTech fans like you discover the show. FinTech Chatter is presented by Tier 1 people, leaders in FinTech executive search. We'll help you launch, scale, and innovate by delivering world-class talent. And you can find out more at tier1people.com. Until the next episode, stay safe